Good morning. Welcome to Tip Off, or good afternoon, or whenever you might be watching. Welcome. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. It's signing day. You can take a day away, a little bit away from all the hype and lying and garbage and treating 18-year-old kids badly and all sorts of good stuff. Gosh, it makes college football look good today. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll have a Kevin Pelton Part 1 podcast for you today. We'll have Part 2 for you tomorrow. Part 1's all NBA, Part 2's Jazz. So big stuff coming up the show. Here's what we got for you today on the program. We will bring you a NBA 5 like we always do. Then we will break down the Jazz performance in Portland, and it will include, if NBA.com plays along, I just prepped all of it, a 6-play sequence in the second quarter of the best pick-and-roll action the Utah Jazz have had all season long. So I hope you enjoy that. With that said, I got no band today, so let's just jump in. You can follow us on Facebook, Locked On Jazz, or you can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sports. I'm also on Facebook at David Locke, which is kind of when I do my personal stuff. If you want to follow that and share those kind of things in life, appreciate it if you do. Just like us on all of those things. And then our Google Plus community, they've done a nice job. A bunch of guys have posted some cool stuff on Locked On Sports Google Plus community about recruitment today and all the things you're interested in, so you can follow all of the local sports there as well. So thanks very much for tuning in, being a part of this, make it as big as it is. We've made huge progress in hitting big numbers. So let's hit the NBA 5. I think Brian Shaw is trying to catch Jock Vaughn on the next coach to be fired list. Holy smokes. Denver lost last night to the Philadelphia 76ers the day after Shaw called out his team for not putting out an effort, and then makes you wonder whether or not his team's sabotaging him a little bit. Denver, who really has, been mismanaged since George Karl and Masari went to Toronto, and continue to have major problems, but they're pretty healthy at this point. This is their team. Tyson Chandler, Aaron Afala, Wilson Chandler, Kenneth Faried, Nurkic, with J.J. Hickson, Gallinari coming off the bench, and Jameer Nelson. I mean, this is their team. They're not crippled by some injury. There's not something dramatically wrong with them. They're just not good, and I'm not even sure what future piece they have. Kenneth Faried last night plays just 19 minutes, doesn't score, still doesn't pass, no assists. Denver's in pretty desperate scenario. Obviously, Gallinari's injury has changed who they are a great deal, but it is, that was the key piece in the Carmelo Anthony trade. He and Jacques Vaughn are both in considerable trouble and on the verge of getting fired here at some point in time. Detroit blows out Miami last night as DJ Augustine, who has replaced Brandon Jennings at point guard, 25 points, 13 assists last night. Augustine's a very similar player, draft position, size, athleticism to Trey Burke. He was in Charlotte for the opening 4 years of his career. He had a fabulous rookie year, then he kind of fell off. Then Charlotte decided they didn't know what to do with him. He's now become kind of a bounce around but very helpful backup to a lot of teams, and now with the injury to Brandon Jennings in his 7th season is carrying the load for them. But that's an interesting comp in a lot of ways. Kevin Pelton and I will talk about it. That's a former 9th pick of a draft who in his 2nd year in Charlotte just kind of fell on, then started his 3rd year, and then they moved on. Trey looked really good last night. We need to probably give him some props for that. But it's an interesting player to watch and see what's going on with that. Dwayne Wade didn't play for Miami in that game, so it's a little, Miami still continues to be a bona fide mess. Sounds like we might get more Tim Duncan. Sam Amick reported at the USA Today that Duncan could come back for another year. It's interesting to see what he does money-wise on that, as there seems so much that San Antonio was lining up free agency to try to add a piece, but Duncan having such an amazing year this year, an all-star performance. Nick Collison got a 2-year extension. It works the cap. It's loyalty. There's a bunch of really good stuff to it about Oklahoma City on that deal. Kevin Durant decided to go to Twitter and torch people who didn't like it, which was unique. An interesting WNBA story. Diana Taurasi makes $107,000 in the WNBA. She makes $1.5 to play in Russia. $1.5 million, I say, to play in Russia, and her Russian team has asked her not to play in the WNBA this year. So the best player of the WNBA will not play this year because of the fact that she's being paid by Russian team to not play. You're probably not a big WNBA fan, but it's an interesting story, and it's a bad day for the WNBA. It's pretty much a crisis level situation for the WNBA in that. We've got the first of two fascinating basketball games tonight. Oklahoma City plays the New Orleans Pelicans 2 games in a row, and this will determine I think actually, if Oklahoma City can win this game, I would say that they actually probably eliminate the play Oklahoma City if they can win both of them, take New Orleans out. But the same way, if Oklahoma City loses 2 of them, you have to really wonder. And finally, I say this all the time, I would rather have Derek Favors than DeMarcus Cousins. I screen share this for you to watch this, Vine. This is from last night's game. DeMarcus Cousins standing still on an inbound, guarding Maurice Spates on the wrong side of the ball, not paying any attention at all. Inbound from Steph Curry on the near sideline. Spates on the far side. Cousins guarding him on the top side. If you didn't know any better, you'd say he had money on this game playing like that. That's how bad it is. I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying that's how bad it is. And a slam dunk. And that is a player who you're allowing to have the hands around the neck of your franchise. And that is why I would forever want Derek Favors instead of DeMarcus Cousins. You will never win with DeMarcus Cousins in any way, shape, or form. And you can't have it. You can't have a bad dude as your number one guy who's got his hands around the neck. I don't care how talented. I don't care what it's bottom line. Everyone's following him. How he treats people is going to dictate your franchise. That is why I'd rather have Derek Favors and need to go get another piece than have DeMarcus Cousins. I would not want DeMarcus Cousins. I would not have signed him to an extension. I would not have continued to go down the road with him. Sacramento will never win as long as they have him. That is your NBA 5. All right, let's go to the Jazz game last night against Portland. Jazz were, I thought, very good last night. Lots of reasons. Early in that ball game, I really felt as though the Blazers were playing with Robin Lopez there, with a lot of energy, a lot of juice to the game, and frankly, I kept feeling like the Jazz were about to get blown out, and they stayed in it. They defended well. They took away the 3 in the first half. They only allowed 2 threes in the first half. And then the third quarter, they switched Rudy onto Aldridge and really disrupted everything Portland was doing in the ball game. Really, I thought had a terrific game all the way around. At that point, now suddenly they were playing in possession for possession, 3-point game, 5 minutes left, and we're not good in the final 5 minutes. That's going to take some time. We've got to figure out how we're doing that. We have the lowest 3-point shooting percentage in the final 5 minutes, the second lowest field goal percentage in the final 5 minutes of a close game. This one didn't last for very long. Trey, who last year was so incredible in the clutch, hasn't actually been able to have that same success this year. In fact, if you're one who doesn't believe the hot hand theory or doesn't believe clutch stats, there's a real argument from a lot of people, by the way, who don't believe the idea of clutch stats. They think that it's just a small sample size with a lot of noise. And, Trey, frankly, right now would make you believe that that's probably true. Trey, a year ago, was the best there was in the NBA in the final 5 minutes of a close game. Truly, nobody was better. I think he finished, I'm pulling it up right now just to make sure I get it exactly right. But last year in the clutch play, Trey finished 17 of 33 from 3. After last night, this year, Trey is now 2 of 17. Which, interestingly enough, is 19 of 50 in his career in clutch moments, which is 38%, which is getting awfully close to his career number of 3-point shooting, which would lead you to believe that last year was simply a freak outlier that he was able to do that. But boy, was he great late in games. This year he has not been nearly as much. I love that win probability box score. I said we'd kind of check this after every game, and I was a little surprised to see this. I thought Trey played pretty well last night, but might as well, for those of you that are watching this, we'll always try to share this for you. Win probability's got some flaws. It's not the end all. Don't go make too many opinions on it, but I think it's an interesting way to look at the game. Certain plays are obviously more important than others as the game goes on. And the Jazz highest chance of winning the game at any point last night was early in the fourth quarter. They were up to about a 58% chance to win a game when Trey hit a 13-foot jumper, but then things fell apart. The Jazz, and the big swing happens at the 4:51 mark when Wesley Matthews buries a three. The win probability for the Blazers on one play goes from 66% to 74%, a 13% jump on that one single three by Wesley Matthews. The Jazz then, Trey misses a three. Aldridge makes some free throws. Favors misses a hook shot. Boom, Wesley hits another three, and ball game's over. And here's what I think's, this is sometimes where I want, one of the reasons I like this. We often freak out so much about how coaches deal with things late in games. Okay, with 3:26 left in this game, with the Blazers going up by 9, their win probability is 96.7%. This game's over at that point. And yet we'll often hold this whole entire conversation about what happens in the final 3 minutes of a game. So the game fell apart with Wesley hitting those 2 threes. We missed a bunch of shots. I was very surprised to see Trey at a negative 417. Damian Lillard was great, plus 26. If we go to the Jazz, players who had the best win probability added last night: Gordon Hayward, Enes Kanter, Trevor Booker, Rudy Gobert, not as much. This does not account for the impact Rudy Gobert has defensively. He's not getting credit for Aldridge misses and things of that nature. So this is where this has a little bit of a flaw. Dante, Joe, and Trey come out of the bottom end. Damian, Wesley, Matthews carry the load for these guys, and their bench doesn't do a great job. We never checked this the other night, by the way, on the final night of January when the Jazz played the Warriors and played such a good game on January 30th, and we can do that right now for you so that we can give the credit where credit is due. We just, because we didn't have a tip-off the next day, we can look at it. Again, this is not perfect, but I think it shows you the importance of certain plays at certain moments, so I like it. It's a piece of the puzzle to share with you, and so I want to share it with you with some regularity. The more we use it, I think the more we'll understand where it's got flaws and where it doesn't have flaws. Rudy was just terrific last night. In so many of the things he did defensively and altering the game. Favors and Rudy were on the floor together for 20-plus minutes the other night. Here is the most valuable player of the game the other night was Trevor Booker with his plus 15. The least valuable was Enes Kanter. The GOAT was Steph Curry, and then the hero. And really, again, here the Jazz, I said this on the broadcast that night, the Jazz opened the fourth quarter or third quarter, the 80% win probability, and when 5 minutes in, they still kept their lead got the lead up to 16 off a miss. They're up to 95. I mean, that game's kind of done at that point. Beautifully done. Booker, Elijah Millsap, Trey Burke up on the top on that one. Rudy Gobert, Gordon's at about even. Dante negative, Trev and Derek and Ennis negatives on that given night for Jazz basketball. Lots of stuff. Big picture, though, for a second for me, and then we'll dig into the 6 best plays I've seen from this team in a little while. I really thought there was some great stuff last night. But this is the first of the Jazz are basically a 500 team for the last 25, 26 games. Their differentials at even. They've jumped from really what was one of the worst teams in the NBA to a middle-of-the-pack average team for the month of January. And then if you take it back to midway through December, they really have played very, very well. Now we have the last 3 games where we've begun this onslaught that I really thought could become disastrous. I think there'll be some bad nights. It could be tonight for all we know. It could be Sacramento, could be a tough one, 4 games in 5 nights. But the Jazz are on a sequence of games here, which bridge an all-star break, which make it a little tough. Of playing the Clippers, the Warriors, the Blazers, the Grizzlies, the 4 top teams in the West. Phoenix, who's number 8. Sacramento, they get a less good team. New Orleans, who's hot, and 9. Dallas is 5. Next. Portland, we play back again, the first game back from the break. San Antonio, who's 6 on the 23rd. So, this sequence is really going to tell us something. Well, so far, in 3 games out of this sequence, the Jazz are dead even. I mean, if you look at all the differential, and some of it's misleading because you have the Barbosa threes late, but the Jazz offensive rating is 107.3. The defensive rating is 107.2. The pace of play is slow, which I think is going to work very well for this team. As long as you have Rudy Gobert, you might as well put teams in a slow-paced game and grind it out a little bit and force teams to play with Gobert on the floor, slowing it down. Some of the interesting numbers. One of our problems is turnovers are still a little bit high in this stretch. Offensive rebounding has become a force for us in the way that we play. Enes Kanter's 4 offensive rebounds a game are enormous. But it's an interesting sequence of time for the Jazz to be playing these teams. And these are the best of the best, right? So 107.3 from a defensive rating is not good, except for if we take, the season-long look at the teams the Jazz are playing, and of Portland's that they've played 4 top 10 offense or 3 top 10 offenses in a row. And the offensive rating of the teams they've played, the Clippers are 110.6, Golden State is 110, and Portland's 104.7. I mean, we can just do some basic math here and decide to average those 3 out in what would come out as the average of those 3 teams, and you end up with a 108.4. So the Jazz having a defensive rating of, and that's not a perfect way to do it because you have to look at possessions and time and blah, blah, blah. It's actually a little higher because there were 100 possessions in the Blazer game. Last night we just slowed it down. I think we played a much slower game. We played about 92 possessions last night. But so your defensive rating is a 107.2, where the average against those 3 teams I just said was going to, somewhere in the 108s or whatever I came up with. Okay, so you're better than average against the 3 best defensive teams in the or 3 of the best offensive teams in the NBA. It's enormous. And then you begin to see this team learn how to play together. The other one is Gordon has just been big time. I mean, I don't know if the guy got All-Star snubbed and he's pissed, or if he got baby fever, but he's had that for a few months, or what took place for G. But holy smokes, he is having mammoth games. I mean, you just don't. Gordon's on a 6-game stretch with 20 or more for 5 of the 6 games. He's averaging about 22, 5 and 5 over the last 5 or 6 games. He is hitting 50% of his threes. This is best player on the floor every night. Lillard probably was the best player last night, but that's big-time stuff for a 24-year-old kid. He really is playing well and carrying it. And then the way that we used Derek last night, coming down the middle on the pick and roll, really exposed some weaknesses in Portland. And let's dig into that. I want to look at the 6-play sequence of pick and roll. That's the best I've seen out of the Jazz maybe all year. Maybe in a few years, frankly. Let's see if we can screen share this with you. We're going to use if it works. You never know about NBA.com. We're going to use the dot system here. So hopefully the movement system of the dots is going to work for you. I have previewed all of these already so that if they don't work, I'm going to be really, really pissed. So let's get into some basics here for a second. The Portland Trail Blazers are the only team in the NBA that for much of the season, it slipped a little recently, have been holding opponents below 30% on both the corner 3 and the above the break 3. In addition to that, they allow the fewest amount of threes from the corner, second fewest to Portland, and second fewest to Chicago, and second fewest to Chicago on both the corner 3 and above the break 3. So 1, they defend the 3 beautifully, and 2, they don't let you shoot it. So we can naturally deduce, how do you do that? You don't leave the wings. You don't you basically prevent guys from getting those shots by guarding it. It's pretty simple. So the Jazz, as the night went on, figured out how they could expose the Blazers a little bit with this, and then just ripped them apart on 6 straight plays down the stretch. So let's start with the first one, if I may, of course. Of course, NBA.com. It didn't work the first time through. Let's see if we can get it to work now. Those of you who know me well are listening right now going, this is going to be epic. He's going to have a total meltdown. There's a chance. There's a chance. All right, so our first play is at about 3:39. There he goes, 3:39. It's a foul on C.J. McCollum. Are you guys getting the dots? This is Portland with the ball. Yes, you are. Good. All right, this is Portland with the ball. I love these dots. And this is actually, you can just see the Jazz actually defend this pretty well. Nicholas Batum drives, Gobert comes over, forces the pass out to Aldridge, and look at the Jazz covering the paint. And this is so much what they want to do. This is actually really beautiful defense by the Jazz on these sequences too, so we might as well take advantage of this. So one of the principles, you never leave strong side corners. So whoever's over here should not leave strong side corners. So they run their set, Batum comes over, he runs off a pick from Lopez, which is usually a good pick. Gordon goes under it, which he's supposed to do because Batum's not shooting well. Millsap doesn't want to leave strong side corner, but these guys want to force that pass out, and look at them come over. Rudy, the big feature here, Batum knows better than to challenge that. They go to Aldridge. Aldridge, nice rotation by Joe, and then he takes a tough shot, and he's really good, and so he makes it. All right, so now this is the beginning of a sequence where the Jazz, the first time, they're playing without Trey Burke on the floor. And so it's going to be a Gordon, and they're playing with Favors and Gobert on the floor, which I think is important. And frankly, they're playing with Ingles and Millsap, which aren't very good shooters. This is the big thing for me about the Jazz right now. The Jazz are not a team. They're a bunch of assets that have been put together that Quinn's trying to make play as a team. But none of this has been made. None of these, there have been no moves yet made to this guy, this veteran player, this specific skill player will let us win games. We're simply just developing players right now. And when you start to imagine us building this team with players that specifically have roles because of what other players and core players in this team can do, it gets pretty exciting. So here's Gordon. It takes a little while to get going, but they're going to run a pick and roll with Favors at the top. Ingles and Millsap are going to space, and Gobert stays down the lane. And here comes Gordon. And you can see Lopez rolls over to deal with the driving Gordon. Aldridge is not going to leave Gobert. It's kind of a joke that he spaced this far. McCollum stays to the three-point shooter, and so does – actually, let's see, who's zero? Oh, Lillard is zero, and McCollum stays over to Ingles, probably more than he should, and the Jazz pass it over, and now there's a foul on the play. So you see the Jazz on the first play here. They kind of pick them apart, doing kind of what being able to take advantage a little bit of that aspect of the weakness of the Portland defense. So here's the next one. Again, Portland's offense coming here. This is actually Gobert is guarding Aldridge right here. Aldridge will end up pushing off on this for an offensive foul. But again, there's some good stuff here. This is a guard-to-guard pick and roll. The Jazz switch it nicely, understand their assignments, and switch that play. They come up to Lopez here. They try to cut through to get Aldridge the ball, and he's going to fend off, commit an offensive foul. So now the Jazz, with a little bit of offensive sequence, Trey Burke's back in the game to run Gobert, Ingles, and Hayward. And this is a new play the Jazz have put in recently. Often you'll run this with both your bigs, but with Gobert, you don't always want to have Gobert up here. So you'll start at the elbows, which is where we were a second ago, with Hayward and Favors. And Hayward, instead of running it with usually we run our power forward out and we high-low our bigs, but with Gobert and Favors on the floor together, it may not be the best sequence. So this is a little different. Hayward will come over here. You're either trying to promote a switch or a 1-3 pick and roll or something of that sort. So Hayward comes out. They can't get the dribble handoff on this play, so Trey rolls around. Now it's basically, without the pick, becomes a Favors and Trey two-man game. Gordon's spaced out. Look at how tight Batum is to him. Gobert does a nice job of understanding spacing and clearing this area for Trey to work. So Trey works, and as Lopez takes a step down too far to cut off the drive, he hits Favors right here, and then Favors goes to the basket and draws the foul. So really well done, and again, some interesting work by Quinn using the same principle, a little bit of a trickery up front with the Hayward Trey stuff, but really it becomes a two-man game between Trey and Favors, well-spaced, and the key to that play, really, we've talked about this a lot, is Rudy understanding where to go on the floor, and Rudy does a really nice job of moving out of that area in the right spot. All right, we've beat them back-to-back times by using the big on the pick and roll. So now what do the Jazz do? They come up the front court. They get into an early drag situation. This is nice. This is the double stagger with Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors. Hayward spaces the corner. He's supposed to go all the way down. Ingles is supposed to go all the way down to this corner. They don't do that. That's kind of the level of detail. We've got to get to the next level. Gordon's down pretty far, but Joe does not go as far as he's supposed to go. And there's you've caught them in a little bit of a mismatch here by pushing quickly. This is what Quinn wants. All right, the Jazz actually have an advantage here on this possession right now because LaMarcus Aldridge is guarding Gordon Hayward. This is why you've got to run all the way down. So Batum is now stuck guarding either Favors or Gobert. Kaman is in the game. He's guarding one of these, and over on the far side, Wesley has the matchup. So Trey comes off the stagger. Rudy rolls early, bringing Batum with him. Now Trey rolls to the side, and Kaman slides all the way over here to deal with Trey, but if you watch this little bubble, as he doesn't want to go all the way. See how he leaves that, and he kind of steps back toward Favors here. Trey gives a head bob and goes all the way to the basket for the layup because Kaman didn't want to commit over because the Jazz on the two previous plays had gotten it to Favors. That might be one where it would have been better to not using the dots. You might have been able to see that with the little aspect there of what Trey did, but really good crafty play by Trey. So now let's go to the next one. All right, we've worked them in a bunch of ways. 3 plays in a row have worked. Here comes the next concept here. By the way, here's Aldridge trying to work Gobert. Jazz double it. This is good to watch the defense too. This is exactly what the Jazz want. Look how tight they are in the middle. Favors guarding Kaman down. Both guys have slid over. Excuse me. Hayward digs out a little bit on Aldridge to help Gobert, but the Jazz other players have slid over as they're supposed to. Wesley comes off, back to Aldridge. Now they trap Aldridge, and look at the great rotation here by Trey Burke coming all the way over to rotate. Now Joe's got to probably be responsible for those 2 guys there, and Joe steps out exactly as he's supposed to. Aldridge is forced to throw a long cross-court pass to Batum, and look at how well the Jazz get back to this. Trey's gotten back to his man. Gordon stays out with Wesley. Gobert has slid down for the rebound out of this. Really good action on the Jazz defense. Shots no good, and let's go. Here the Jazz go on an early push. Let's pause it. Do they have any early mismatch here? You've got Lillard matched up on Trey. Batum is on Ingles. Aldridge is not sure. Wesley's all the way over to Gordon. Frankly, the play probably at this point should go to Gordon a little bit, but instead we've been killing him on the pick and roll, so he hit the trailing Favors. Nice play right here. Yes, they've got a matchup problem. Wesley Matthews is trying to guard Gobert in the post. We've got them in a mismatch right away. Let's hit the action fast. We swing to Gordon over here on Aldridge, so we get to where you want to get to. Gobert's trying to post. We can't find it. We patiently bring it back to Favors. Favors swings multiple actions, multiple sides of the floor. This is the essence of our offense. And now we've got a pick and roll. Here, with the floor decently spaced, Wesley Matthews is in the wrong spot. Ingles is to the corner. Look how much our square is covering. And they overplay it. So Trey just takes one step to his left and buries the jump shot. He's fouled by Lillard. Beautiful offensive execution by the Jazz right there. Just running this crisply as you're supposed to in every way. Let's go to number 5 as the Jazz just kept rolling late in the second quarter. Again, defensively, here's the quick shot. And they make it Gobert inbounds. Now off an inbound, you're not going to get the same mismatches. Everyone's marked up. So what do the Jazz do? They get into some early action. Trey's really rolling. This time they're going to run it with Gobert, who's the trailing big. Ingles goes down to the corner like he's supposed to. Hayward takes his man. Look at the triangle. Look how wide the Jazz triangle is here. The triangle, for those of you who are watching the audio version of this, is the space. The graph shows how much of the court you're covering. So the Jazz have the 2 bigs, Gobert at the top of the key, Favors at the free throw line, Trey Burke waiting up top. They space it down, and now here comes Gobert. So you've taken the time to get Favors down to the dunker. You've flattened the defense, and now here comes Rudy finding the angle he wants. Trey rolls off this. Lillard gets picked, and this is really interesting because what you're seeing here is Aldridge is dropping way back because he doesn't respect Gobert's play out front. So they drop him all the way back. Trey reads this, now flips the pick the other way. Lillard is buried, and Trey, because Aldridge is staying so far back, gets a beautiful mid-range free throw line wide open jumper and buries it. Cool stuff by the Jazz. And this was the coup de grace. This was the best of the best. If the band had been working today, we would have run this as the final. We would have run this as the final play along the way. But this is the Gordon Hayward corner three that puts us up at halftime. And it is the best play of the sequence because it includes why you build off of all of this into big man passing. Eventually, Portland can have all of their principles, have all the things they believe in. But here, with 37 seconds left in the quarter, we've been riddling them with the pick and roll. We space the floor beautifully. Ingles far corner, Gordon near corner, Gobert down low, and here comes a pick and roll with Favors. Again, Kaman drops down, so Trey comes off the pick. 25 is Steve Blake guarding Trey. Trey comes, Derek rolls. This time, Portland's had enough. Aldridge slides in. Batum starts to slide in. Look at they've all sucked in. They're not staying out on their guys nearly the way they used to. So the pass comes to Favors. And look, there's Nicholas Batum trying to deal with Favors as Kaman goes over further this time, and Wesley slides down because Trey's buried them. Now the pass comes to Favors, and they've sucked into Favors. And what do? Bam! Gordon Hayward, left corner, whap! That's basketball, boys and girls. That's basketball. That is fabulous stuff right there. That's a long six play, a lot of little dots running around your screen to try to show you what I want to show you, but that is basketball, and that is awesome. That is this team doing what Quinn Snyder wants them to do. That's Trey Burke, Derek Favors, and Gordon Hayward getting an understanding. And that is, imagine when this team takes the next step and instead of, no offense to Joe Ingles, but has a Courtney Lee shooter out on the right side. Right? Or what happens when the Jazz have a point guard that's a better shooter than Trey Burke is right now, so that ball's in Gordon's hand. This thing's coming together. And this is also where Rudy, understanding spacing. Rudy was in the right space on all of those, playing down below the rim. Comes up, if he gets a pass, boom, fine. He doesn't have post moves. But that's how you space it. Now, let's understand something. That was Portland. Portland sucks to the outside. We absolutely attacked them where they're going to let us. They're going to let us play a three-man game in the middle, basically. We attacked them. We beat them up with it. Trey made some shots. Now, other teams are not going to do that. They're going to take that away. You're going to pass the wings. You're going to have to make some of those shots. Joe's going to have to be willing to take them. Gordon's going to have to bury a corner three, which he's not great at, or the roster eventually develops. And you make moves when you begin to understand what Rudy and Derek can do together, what Trey can do, what Gordon can do, what Ennis can do, what Alec or Ryan, whoever the core pieces are. I forgot somebody in there. Probably Trey. Did I mention him? When you figure out what those core pieces can do, then you start to put the other piece around it. Okay, Joe Ingles is a nice player. I like him. He's not a great shooter. Shooting 39%. Let's not kid ourselves. Put a guy, a dead-eye bomber out there on the far side. Oh, boy, that becomes awesome. Right? Kevin Belton uses an analogy I've used all year long in the postcast, which you should have watched by now. And that is, Derek's a young Amari Stoudemire. Derek's a junior Amari Stoudemire in Phoenix. Coming straight down the middle. Boom, 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 boom. It's great stuff. That pass to Gordon is the key to the whole thing. And frankly, Enes Kanter's having an enormous impact on games right now. Playing, when he got Myers-Leonard on him in the second quarter, he kicked his ass. Enes Kanter has a back-to-the-basket post-game with the second unit that is going to make him very successful. And the 4 offensive rebounds Ennis is getting every night have to be thought of as a guy picking off a pass at midcourt and taking it the other way for a layup. Those are enormous, enormous possessions. You're taking 4 empties and turning them in 3 or 4 times a game into buckets. I mean, I don't know if I can find it, but I would guess over the last 10 games, Enes Kanter is getting 6 points a game on second chance points. Come on now. That's mammoth. If those are zeros, if those possessions that Ennis right there is getting are zeros, then over the course of a 90 possession game, that's 6 points on a 90 possession game. That's 6 or 7 points, maybe even 8 points on your points per 100 possessions. Woo! Don't underestimate what that does at all. I mean, really, the last 10 games, Enes Kanter's averaging 3.3 offensive rebounds a game, 3.6 over the last 15 games. Those are big deals. Guys don't do that. I'll have to check league leaders on that, but there aren't many guys that do that. Don't underestimate the value of this 22-year-old kid. Hey, the fact he's got 3 assists in the last 350 minutes drives me crazy. It's worse than it was his rookie year. There are areas where he must development, but we're +8 per 48 minutes with him on the floor, with Ennis on the floor the last 5 games too. Second chance points, Ennis over the last 15 games is averaging 4 second chance points a game. His last 20 games, he's averaging 4.4 second chance points a game. That's big, guys. He's getting 11 points in the paint over the last 5 games per night. Okay, he's got flaws. He's the worst rim defender in the NBA. He doesn't pass. Great. Let's not bury him. Let's let him develop. But right now, that combination is cool on how this thing is playing out. All right, that, my friends, is tip-off. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, wait, do I have questions? It's 33 minutes long. I'm short on time today. Let me see. Oh, I have. All right, I'm going to fly through these. My bad. 40-minute tip-off. Yesterday, you mentioned the Jazz roster has not been shaped yet. Does the rising salary cap affect our future ability to get good players at a discounted price? Why can't we just get good players? Why do we have to get them at a discounted price? You never get good players at a discounted price. It's a bad concept. Let's just get good players. Lots of questions and comments. Postcast is still having sound issues, just FYI. It's kind of a bummer that I couldn't understand Pelton very well. Oh, sorry. Didn't know that. I am having a problem with my new laptop reading my external sound card, and I'm going to have to see what I can do about that. I might have to reinstall some software today. The last few years, we haven't added many free agents because we don't want to skip steps in development. When do you think we begin to add impactful free agents? I think if the right free agents are available this year, we do it, or if the right trades are available, you begin to maybe see a piece this offseason. Though you might still wait, might wait another one. We might see. You'll see. You often mention the value of three-point shooters in the league, Korver, Meeks, Matthews, etc. Why do you think the Jazz don't use Steve Novak? Because I think he's a 4, and we already have 4 bigs, and it's hard to find minutes for him. They have not tried him at a 3. They must not feel like it works for him as a 3 and Joe's doing a better job with that. They've generally thought of him as a stretch 4, and it just hasn't come together with this team. Do you think Rudy could develop a spot shot like Serge Ibaka did? Maybe. But Serge is pretty good. Serge is one of the 4 or 5 best mid-range jumpers in the NBA, probably. So I think that's a stretch on that player. But can he develop something? Maybe. You just need it that he makes it just enough that when you don't guard him. But there's also plenty of guys that don't ever do it. Do you think the Jazz would go after Wesley Matthews this offseason? What kind of money do you think he'll demand? Pelton and I talked about that in the podcast. Of what dollar figure does he come in at? Kevin thinks that he's an 8-figure player. It's a lot of money. And you got to figure out whether we're really ready for that yet. And whether or not, what are we trying to do there? So that's why you might wait another year still. You're still waiting to see is Rod are you paying $10 million for Wesley for something Rodney can become? Probably not. Wesley's pretty damn good. Leads the league in threes made. It's a big deal. Let's not underestimate that. But where are we in that process, I think, is the question. It looks like the Jazz are going to finish a few wins above 30. If that happens, only one season under 30 wins and one other losing record. How lucky are Jazz fans? Yeah, that's a rhetorical question. I think it's I think this organization's impressive, and not just because I work for it. I always have. Will Kanter ever learn how to pass? He's got to get the reward. They're trying. He's got to get back to feel rewarded for passing, and he needs to feel that that's worth it to do those things. And this is a good dude. So let's hope. But right now, the 3 assists since January 1st is not acceptable. He's doing a lot of other great stuff, though. Let's not. You can do whatever the hell you want, actually. But I would suggest that you don't be a negative Nelly and you at least cherish the good things he's doing along the way and the areas where he's really good and hope that he can develop some of these others. That is tip-off. Have a good day. Get those fax machines rolling. What an antiquated crap system.